Hello everybody, I'm Dr. Christine Carmela Ramos. I will be sharing with you the Filipino concept of Loob in a present globalizing world. Things about us change so rapidly that we forget how much we owe to the past. We cannot shut ourselves off from the past any more than we can shut ourselves off geographically from the rest of the world. It is difficult that the great problems of human life have occurred over and over again for thousands of years. The answers of great minds in the past to these problems are part of our culture. And in this regard, I am affirming this global society. The changing contemporary world is a global phenomenon, facilitated by technology. Teaching had been different ever since the time of Socrates to our postmodern realities. The age of questioning seemed to be overshadowed by the onslaught of information from television, computers, and other forms of media. It remains the constant challenge of professors teaching philosophy to instill to the students the love of wisdom, and this love and search for wisdom is not instant, but sometimes takes a lifetime and sometimes tortuous road wherein there could be no final answers but another form of question. Nor are there instant answers from television and other forms of media, though they facilitate the teaching and learning process. Nonetheless, reflection and constant asking of questions should not be undermined in the face of a fast-paced world. In terms of multiculturalism, I believe in Martin Heidegger's view that one cannot isolate oneself from the others, for after all, there is only one world, our world. Each of us is born with our own present realities. In being others in the world, we affirm a world with diverse views and culture and accept these differences. Moreover, Heidegger's view encourages the human person, to be non-judgmental, as well as realize that there is a bigger world apart from one's own. What perhaps is more important, as what Sakamoto points out, is the fact that the general trend toward interpenetration and interdependence develops first and foremost on the level of the advantaged in the system of the world, those who have the informational, human, and material resources at their disposal that makes it possible for them to utilize the potential of internationalization for their interests. Internationalization, therefore, proceeds in the North or the West among big powers, big businesses, and the governing elites, such as international bureaucrats, much ahead of and at the expense of the South or the East. Smaller nations, labor and smaller business, and the people. The globalization of the capitalist economy is best demonstrated by the globalization of the widening gap and increasing inequality between the North and the South, within the South and within the North. And within this discussion, we also look at the globalization of the capitalist economy. And we look at Ayn Rand's defense of capitalism. And for Rand, in a political sense, She promoted the absence of physical coercion that symbolized the coercive power of the state. For Ayn Rand, objectivism is about happiness. It is the concept of a person as a heroic being. And following Aristotle, happiness as the moral purpose of life, and productive achievement as the noblest activity, and reason as the only absolute. Ayn Rand argued that intellectual freedom is equivalent to political freedom, and that free mind is also a free market. They are corollaries. Further, for Ayn Rand, selfishness means an independent mind that recognized no authority higher than its own value, higher than its judgment of truth. In a certain scene of Ayn Rand's We the Living, she proclaimed, "What is my joy if all hands, even the unclean, can reach into it? What is my wisdom if even the fools can dictate to me? What is my freedom if all creatures, even the botched and the impotent, are my masters? What is my life if I am but to bow, to agree, and to obey?" Based on these quotes, we can reflect on contemporary ethical issues that include international rights, offering basic and universal standards, which are the most commonly applied ethical theory in making cross-cultural moral judgments anytime and anywhere in the world. International rights also include the right to physical movement, the right to ownership of property, the right to freedom from torture, and the right to a fair trial. A human right is a moral entitlement that places obligations on other people to treat one with dignity and respect. Inspired with Ayn Rand's individualism, I am now going to continue with the Filipino experience of individuality and freedom. I will further explore the transpersonal worldview of the Filipinos' belief that the individual can go beyond human limitations such as geography, space, and time. This worldview encompasses the world as run by spirit or spirits such as God, mind, providence, and others. In this vein, it is my task to explore the Filipinos' concept of loob, our nature of trying to get along with others that recognize the dignity and feelings of the human person. Filipino philosophy is the mentality, perspective, and thought of the regular residents of the Philippines towards the everyday encounters throughout everyday life, religion, correspondence, endurance, interrelationship with individuals, and intra-relationship with oneself, the I, and the inspiring of one spirit of the Filipino being. Over the years, Filipinos have experienced extreme and unpleasant occasions, great and abundant years as well, but we had remained firm, and like bamboo grass, we are standing, we are swaying, as we accept monetary defeat, political emergency, natural disasters, and others. There are twofold concepts of loob. First, loob is holistic. Secondly, it is interior. The holistic concept is non-compartmentalized and is centered on the unified entity of the world. On the other hand, the interior aspect of loob is connected to intellectual, volitional, emotional, and ethical aspects of life. In this vein, the God for the Filipinos is whom Karl Jaspers thought of when one encounters the so-called boundary situations, death, suffering, guilt, and struggle. For instance, during the EDSA Revolution, a bloodless revolution in the Philippines in 1986, we experienced religious aspirations that cannot be separated from the political challenges of that period. Our values richly developed and were crystallized during the People Power Revolution. The fight for freedom and justice was attained through nonviolent means. And as we explore new ideas, therefore, for a Filipino and the way I see individualism in our country, it is being an individual is not a self-renunciation. It is not being selfish, but an affirmation of a truly human self, which is the supreme value of human living. Being a human person means that your responsibility is not only for yourself, but also for others. The individual becomes, therefore, a free and creative person who asserts uniqueness, as what Ayn Rand will argue. And that mind and spirit can be free if only the individual is free to choose one's calling and develop talents. Moreover, individuals should be disciplined from within rather than fear from authority figures. Discipline and responsibility should be inculcated especially to the young people through education. There must be a balance between values, culture, money, and society. It should not just be based on money. For similarly, like Hinduism and Buddhism, there must be discipline to attain a happy and contented life. Therefore, Loob in a globalizing world is about the intellectual and spiritual freedom should be equal to economic freedom. Not only does a person becomes responsible, but becomes disciplined and develops self-restraint. Constructive instincts and aspirations are important so society may move forward to its primary purpose. And it is very important that each individual should be given equal chance so they will not be dependent on the government. With the threat of the pandemic, I am thinking and reflecting about many changes occurring, and that we are part of this globalizing reality. We are part of also of that call for change. What happened or is happening in the past, whether it's the hurricane or the present pandemic, is not or are not done overnight or by one person. This also includes the issue of climate change that entails international cooperation, both in research and treatises. All of these instances show that society becomes more global. Several changes occur. Today, we experience social and technological systems expanding, connections become more complex, and change spreads more rapidly at a greater distance. Our ability to construct complex, rapidly changing global systems of production and consumption had outdistanced our ability to monitor, comprehend, and predict, let alone control their behavior. Because of the imbalance between the construction of systems and their control, we are beset with problems without precedent in human experience. As we cope with the challenges of globalization, vis-a-vis technology in Southeast Asia most especially, I look forward to an era of goodwill among our countries and one that will bring peace and contentment to humanity. We are now in history when technological, political trends are converging to produce tremendous opportunities for securing a more peaceful and prosperous world. Though viewing the explosive situations at the turn of the millennium, we are still far from this direction. In this light, it is important to articulate nonviolence locally, nationally, regionally, and globally in face of an intensifying global consciousness. A world of global citizens sees the world as one with its interdependent units of region and nations. The physical boundaries are envisioned to become less and less marked between countries and among regions as we become increasingly interrelated with each other. Globalization is associated with other social processes and a number of related economic, cultural, and political developments that have contributed to an intensifying global interdependence and consciousness of the global whole. I would like to cite some examples of this. In my research, I had seen some similarities of our way of thinking with the Malaysians. For example, the concept of Jemaah, and that is the collective, the group thinking, the teamwork that Filipinos also have. The idea of kerjasama or cooperation or bayanihan for the Filipinos, and at the same time the respect for elders of the Malaysian in their menghormati orang tua that we Filipinos also share with them. Finally, as I end this short sharing, I end with looking beyond. Globalization should not undermine the unique culture and practices of different countries. Hence, an understanding and appreciation of our beginnings, sensitive and sympathetic attitude towards the historical events that have altered, shaped, and enriched our culture are important guiding lights in the journey toward self-discovery. Globalization is neither necessarily a good nor a bad thing. Its moral character will be decided upon by us. The novel coronavirus spread in 2019 proved this fact in terms of border closures and weakening of global consumption. This means that while events in any part of the world will increasingly have effects or be referenced against events in other remote parts, there will be effects and responses that may be detrimental. Undoubtedly, the new normal brought upon by the COVID-19 challenges global citizens to be resilient, driven by necessity, and much needed opportunities for recovery. The global world continues to be redefined, whether in science, data centers, e-commerce, or multifamily dwellings. And with this, I end the short, brief sharing. And again, I'm Dr. Ramos. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much. Terima kasih.